Hello, coming to you from the uncommon city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Never the Hidden Trader Bryce. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 46. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Terraforming Mars out of the dust, and a contributor will dust off Rapa Nui and Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. On their action segment, I discuss Asmodee's announcement of the Ticket to Ride television series. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Revolution of 1828. On the Obscure Bryce game segment, I review the Mincraft card game. And we wrap up the episode by counting down to my number 3 Table Hog game. I had a chance to bring Terraforming Mars, the 2016 Stronghold hit from designer Jacob Frixelius, out of the dust. I last played it with some friends trying out the Venus Next expansion 1 year, 5 months, and 2 days ago. Terraforming Mars has been among BGG's most played games ever since its release, and I managed a handful of plays myself, despite not owning a copy, which is the reason it got dusty for me in the first place. But my local board game cafe offered me a deal to purchase everything for the game at the all-in Kickstarter price, and I jumped at the chance as a birthday treat to myself. When my wife treated me to the Terraforming Mars broken token insert, I was good to go and have tripled my all-time plays in the last month. I already knew this was a great game, and my wife, who had not played it before, has taken to it as well. But what I didn't know until now was that the solo mode was also addicting. Trying to get all those terraforming elements maxed out before the time limit expires is very gripping. I'm going to have to up the difficulty level, though, because I've managed to win all but one of my solo games so far. I didn't think much of the Venus expansion when I learned it almost a year and a half ago, but I quite like it now that I've explored it more. But I really like the Prelude cards. Accelerating the game by a round or two is nice, but what I really like is how that little expansion enables players to customize their starting situation more. It feels like all the players are starting in more dynamic positions than just the corporation cards were dictating. For some reason, I thought Colonies was going to be a more difficult expansion to integrate, but it was easy to learn, and now my wife and I play with everything in our games without difficulty. I am definitely looking forward to Turmoil being shipped later in the year. With new expansion content on the way and a copy finally in my own collection, there is little chance that this will get dusty again. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Francis McGregor, username Zephyl, brought a couple of less common games out of the dust. First up was Rapa Nui, a 2011 Easter Island-themed card drafting game from publisher Cosmos and Carcassonne designer Klaus-Jürgen Ried. Francis last played it 4 years, 1 month, and 25 days ago, and currently rates it a 10 out of 10. Francis writes, Rapa Nui is one of my favorite games. Usually I play online. And I noticed that the re-theme, Bali, has 2 expansions, so I decided to dust this off and see if it was worth keeping. It was just as awesome as I remembered, so I've got it on the trade sale pile and bought Bali and the first expansion. Francis also brought Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road, a 2013 economic card game from designer Gerhard Hecht, also published by Cosmos. Francis last played it 1 year, 1 month, and 4 days ago, and currently rates it a 6 out of 10. Francis writes, Dice Tower Con was coming up, and someone had put this on the virtual flea market wish list, so I decided it needed to play. It fell quite flat for us. I'm finding I don't like deck builders if they don't have a good way to get rid of cards from your deck, and a lot of the time I was just trying to cycle the Patriarchs. Sold at Dice Tower Con. Thanks for the contributions, Francis. Rapa Nui is one of my top want-to-play games, but has eluded my collection. I don't know anyone who has it either. But it sounds really cool. Reaction segment time. A few months ago, mega publisher Asmodee announced they were founding Asmodee Entertainment with the mission, quote, to extend Asmodee's leading intellectual properties into TV, film, book, and comics publishing, location-based entertainment, and consumer products, working in parallel with sister platforms Asmodee Board Games and Asmodee Digital. More recently, they announced a partnership with an independent company called Propagate that would develop the first of these board game-inspired forays, a television series based on Ticket to Ride. Propagate describes the series like this, quote, the television adaptation will be a winner-take-all travel competition series in which 5 teams take the journey of a lifetime as they seek to complete epic challenges and rack up the most miles by air, land, and sea. So, with a wealth of fun and interesting board game properties at their disposal, Asmodee decides to go with a reality television show as their first non-board game endeavor? A reality television show? Lame! I am so disappointed. Talk about pasted on theme! How tenuous a connection to the board game will this television series have? It's just a laughable concept. I have before, and would again, read a book based on a board game. The Settlers of Catan novel was pretty good. I would watch a movie based on a board game, unless, of course, Michael Bay were involved in it in any way whatsoever. I've been out of comics for a while, but I might dip my toe back in for a mini-series or short run of something based on a board game. I don't know what consumer products Asmodee might possibly have in mind that are based on board games, but I would totally use some Five Tribes shaving cream or eat some Mystery in the Abbey cereal for breakfast. But a reality television show? You ask too much of me, Asmodee! Prediction: the Ticket to Ride reality TV show will be terrible and bomb horribly. I just hope the show's inevitable failure doesn't deter Asmodee from trying more interesting projects in the future. This week on the What I Have Been Playing segment, I'm going to tell you about Revolution of 1828, the new two-player-only game from the great Stefan Feld and published by Renegade Games. This is essentially an area control game themed around the obscure election of 1828, which pitted John Quincy Adams against Andrew Jackson. I appreciate games that go out on a limb with unusual and unique themes, and I love this theme. But it is a Stefan Feld game, so don't expect the theme to go that deep. Here's how the game works. Players fight for votes amongst 5 different colored areas, each representing a different part of the country. Each of these colored areas is occupied by 3 discs. Most of the discs are colored to represent a vote for the player in the same colored region. But there are also some special ability discs. Players will take turns drafting one of the discs from any of these areas. The player who takes the last disc from an area has to take an extra turn. Sometimes this is a good thing, and sometimes this is a bad thing, because at the same time, players are also trying to avoid taking too many black wild discs. These discs count as an extra vote in the area of the player's choice, but also symbolically represent the act of mudslinging. While taking the last disc from an area also grants the player an extra point for each disc they draft of that area's color, whoever takes the last disc from the 6th press area loses points equal to the number of black discs they have. Once all the discs have been drafted, a scoring round takes place where players earn a point for each area they win, 2 points for winning an uncontested area, and a point for each disc matching an area they claim the last disc from. After 4 rounds, the player with the most points wins. As with many Stefan Feld games, there is some mathiness involved in the game. Usually that's not a problem as it keeps things balanced, but it works against him in Revolution of 1828. Because with only 2 players, it's very easy to look ahead at the discs available and determine who is going to wind up taking the last disc from that hated press area. Because that area is hated, you do not want to get penalized by the press for mudslinging. The first game I played, I won that stupid area every single round, and there was nothing I could do about it. Let me tell you, that was no fun at all. The second game I played was more balanced, but it was still no fun getting penalized by the press. And that's a problem, because depending on how and where those discs come out, there is no mitigation to avoid winning the press area if that's the way the chips have fallen, regardless of what special ability tiles are in play. The only discs that remain in a player's possession from one round to the next are the black wild ones. Everything else, including a special ability disc that might save you later, gets discarded at the end of the round after scoring. All a player can do, when they see there's nothing they can do to avoid winning the press area, is try to get points elsewhere, but it's rarely enough to counter the damage winning the press causes. There's a mechanical reason for the press area existing, as the game might be pretty boring without it. It does add a little bit of tension until you math out the round and determine who is going to wind up winning it. So despite its mechanical justification, I really hate that element of the game. It ruins the entire experience for me. Stefan Feld is my favorite designer, and there was only one game of his that I don't like, Builder's Duel. But now there's 2. Builder's Duel was also a 2-player only game, so I think, unfortunately, this is just a genre that Stefan Feld is not good at, and I hope he avoids it in the future. I've been known to be a completionist from time to time, and I do own every single other Feld game, with the exception of his soccer game, Dribble Fever. But I don't think I'm going to get Revolution of 1828. In fact, as things stand now, Revolution of 1828 takes over the leader spot in my most disappointing games of the year list because I had such high hopes for it. It's truly heartbreaking for me to talk about a Stefan Feld game this way, but there you have it, Revolution of 1828, one to avoid. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week I'm going to tell you about the Mincraft card game, published by Mattel in 2015 and featuring an uncredited designer. I pronounce it like a question since there's a question mark at the end of the title for some reason. It's interesting to think of a mass market game as obscure, but according to the log play count at BGG, it is obscure to at least experienced gamers. But it shouldn't be. This is actually a pretty cool little game. Here's how it works. Players are adventurers in the world of the Minecraft video game, trying to be the first to craft enough items adding up to a certain number of victory points. To do this, players use a Martin Wallace-style 2 actions a turn system to draft actions from a menu of selections. Players can take the top resource card from one of 5 piles of face-up resources, use their resources to craft an item from one of the 5 piles of face-up items, or reserve an item to craft later. Each item is worth a number of points between 1 and 6 and needs a certain combination of resources between 2 and 5 to craft. Each crafted item also grants the player a once-per-game special ability that players can use at strategic moments. Crafting swords are particularly useful because they protect against creepers, who are shuffled into the resource piles. Each time one of them appears, it explodes, and each unprotected player must lose a resource of their choice. I was quite impressed when I first played this game. Wow, I thought a mass market resource conversion game. Cool! Even more remarkable, not only is it based on an incredibly popular IP, but it's actually a fun game. It lasts just the right amount of time, and the combination of items, resources, and special abilities offers a satisfying depth of strategy for even experienced gamers. But it works particularly well as a family-weight game. If anyone out there has kids that are into Minecraft, but not yet into board games, this might be the perfect bridge for you to hook them with. We continue my top 5 favorite Table Hog Games countdown this week with number 3 on the list, Lisboa, designer Vital Lacerda's masterpiece, published by Eagle Gryphon in 2017. Actually, any of Vital Lacerda's big box Eagle Gryphon games would qualify as Table Hogs, because they all feature massive boards and extensive player areas. But Lisboa is my favorite of the bunch. Lisboa's huge common board features spots for public buildings, the plan tiles to build them, the store track, the treasury track, the score track, the church rondel, city tiles, royal favor tiles, character portraits for character cards, political cards, ship cards, and the downtown map and rubble cube grid. Beside this huge board, we also need space for money, more city tiles, a drawstring bag with clergy tiles, and good tokens. The large player boards have spaces for ships and their cargo holds, rubble sets, houses, official meeples, good tokens, clergy tiles, royal favor tokens, and plan tiles. Players also need space beside their boards for money and the reference booklet. Yes, no reference tile or even page for this game. Players need an entire booklet, and it's absolutely necessary. All the space is necessary for this game, in fact. For a game as intricate and complex as Lisboa, a well-designed game board and player board helps the players learn the game, play the game, and succeed at the game. And it's one of the triumphs of Lisboa that the various boards and reference booklet enable the players to do all 3 of these things. That's one of the reasons why I love Lisboa so much, the care that went into the graphic design of all the components, and how clearly they interact with each other on the various boards. I can't mention Lisboa without also mentioning its brilliant rulebook as well. If anyone were to ask me what the best rulebook of any game is, my answer would be Lisboa. It's a contributing factor for why I like the game so much. I remember when I finished reading Lisboa's rulebook and had that wonderful thought, I understand how this game works perfectly. That's a rare enough thought for any game, but for one as heavy as Lisboa, it's another remarkable achievement of the game. So there we have it, Lisboa, another of my favorite Table Hog games, and another game where the necessity of the space it demands manages to help contribute to the enjoyment that is derived from the game. Well, that will do it for episode 46. Thanks for listening. I'll be traveling this next week, so it might be a couple